Guys, good morning. Money in the Morning with Dr. Boyce Watkins. My name is Dr. Boyce Watkins, and today we're going to talk about this little thing that I read today. Companies are now getting to the point where they are quietly firing, quietly cutting employees. You heard about quiet quitting. Well, now quiet cutting is kind of the thing that companies are doing. So get comfortable, buckle up your seatbelt. We're going to get started on the Black Financial Channel right now. Black Financial Channel, this is theblackfinancialchannel.com. My name is Dr. Boyce Watkins. I'm your friendly neighborhood finance professor. On the Black Financial Channel, we talk about Black wealth and Black economics every single day, sometimes as much as 10 times a day under the B1 condition. B1 means we are Black first. Black first means we love our community. Black first means we break generational curses. Black first means that we educate our kids. If you agree with this philosophy and you can hear me, give me a B1 in the chat. Give me a yes. Let me know my audio's coming through all right. Tell me if I sound good. And if I sound good, and I don't tell me if I'm looking good, because I'm not as confident in my looks, but I want to make sure I at least sound good. So give me a yes in the chat if you can hear me okay. What's going on, Justin Pender and Albert Robinson and Shai Smith? Good to see you. C-Dub, thank you very much for your feedback. Keith Patillo, the Patillo family. I ain't forgot about y'all out in Baltimore. I can't wait to see your kids grow up because they're going to be multimillionaires. I know all about the Patillo family. Y'all got to look them up. Y'all should be teaching a class on how we're going to do it in the Black community. Because one of the things that's really important about wealth, that's really important, that's critical for you to just make sure you understand this is, and I talk about this a lot. You guys know about my book, The 10 Commandments of Black Economic Power. You can get a copy at my website, boycewatkins.com. Family is so important when it comes to wealth. Family is everything. And I'm going to fight for this to the day that I die, because I really want to do everything in my power to convince you that it's the little stuff that makes all the difference. It's the little intangibles, the little things that you think don't even actually matter. That, like, oh, I can cut everybody off and I can fight with my cousins and be in total chaos and somehow still find some way to build. Well, the thing about building that's interesting is that you can't really build in the middle of chaos. Give me a yes if you understand what I'm saying. Because building requires structure. Building requires some sort of unity, an agreement amongst the components of the thing that you're trying to build. Do you get what I'm saying? Like you can't, it's like if you try to build a building in the middle of a hurricane, you can't really build a building in a hurricane, right? Because hurricanes are naturally chaotic. There's a lot of, physicists would call this entropy. There's a lot of just destruction in a hurricane. So some of y'all are struggling when it comes to building because you're trying to build in the middle of a hurricane. And so one of the things I talk about in my book, The 10 Commandments of Black Economic Power, is that before you really truly are able to build the way you want to, I encourage you to look around and look at the weather, look at the economic weather that you're operating in. Look at the weather, the social weather, the cultural weather of your family. Look at the spiritual weather, the weather of the energy. And if there's tornadoes, then settle that down so that at that point you can actually create what you're trying to build. Okay. So so anyway, let's hop in here. Let's jump in and let's talk about this topic for today. And as we kind of get started, I think it's very important. Now I want to introduce y'all to Ryan. Ryan Mathis is in the chat, and Ryan Mathis. I'm not going to call you a hater yet, Ryan, because I want you to get a chance to speak your piece, because I know Ryan's talking about something that's really intriguing right now, which is the Tulsa Real Estate Fund, and I want to kind of lay this out here so we can kind of understand what we're dealing with, what we're up against in terms of tornadoes. I don't like messy. I don't like ridiculous. But so I think your energy, Ryan, as you even approach with this question, I'm a professor. I've been doing this 25 years. I'm not a fly-by-night Negro. I didn't just hop on the internet the other day. And I want to address, first of all, the tone of the question tells me that you're not really trying to answer the question as much as you're trying to express a frustration you have or some energy that you have. So what I'm going to do, first of all, is say, bring different energy when you're talking about things like this. What he's talking about is the Tulsa Real Estate Fund. This is very important. So let me just talk about this real quick, because I think it's fun to hit these things. So it says, Boyce, it's such a shame that you called out white companies, but you won't call out scammers like Jay Morrison. You should be sued right with him. Well, in case you are wondering what's going on here, he's talking about the fact that the Tulsa Real Estate Fund is under some fire because there are some questions that the Tulsa Fund is being asked to answer. Julian Gordon is a guy that is leading that charge. I have supported dozens and dozens and dozens of Black-owned businesses. 86% of Black-owned businesses fail. But I remember I met Julian and Jay in the same year, and I supported both of these guys as they were trying to build their platforms because that's what I was supposed to do. And so these are two people that I know very, very well. And so as a result of this, what I really want to lay out here is this is the kind of energy, the way Ryan lays out this question, this is the energy that isn't necessary to resolve a business dispute. There are appropriate ways to handle a conflict, and there are inappropriate, perhaps almost like slave culture ways to handle a conflict, right? So for you to say something like that, you should be sued with him. Why? How many of you, give me a yes if you heard me or if you are hearing me now when I tell you I have never been paid to sponsor or represent the Tulsa Fund in any way. I have not been paid. I simply believe in Black-owned businesses, and when brothers are trying to build something, I say, okay, you know what? How can I help? That's what I do. Now, if I had been a paid endorser, I would have done a couple of things. Number one, I would have probably put myself on a board of directors to come in and make sure that everything looked the way I needed it to look. The Tulsa Fund doesn't have a board. So if you're an investor in the Tulsa Fund, you should talk to them about that. Second of all, I would have let everybody know that, look, if you invest in this thing or anything, do never put your last nickel into an investment. Do not ever do that. Do not, if you're saying, no, I put my last $500 in there, that is a violation of investing rules that I've shared with you all on this platform. I've explained to you that when you invest, you diversify. Do not ever invest money that you cannot afford to lose. Number three, I would say this. Give me a yes if you're hearing this, because you've heard me say this a million times. I do not give investing advice on this channel. Do you understand that? Or is everybody hearing this? This is not investing advice. Now, I'll tell you guys what I'm invested in. I tell you, if you want to get profit alerts, you go to boycewatkins.com. I'll tell you what stocks I like in the moment, but I do not give investing advice specifically for this reason, because I don't need somebody coming back and saying, oh, I invested in this thing and it didn't work out and it's your fault. No, do your due diligence. And if you don't understand it or you're not comfortable with it, then you should not do it. So what I will say to you is that when you're talking about a Black-owned business or building a Black community and building businesses in your community, you have to understand that there are appropriate ways, and I talk about this a lot in my book, The 10 Commandments of Black Economic Power. This is based on financial scientific research. I've taught at the University of Kentucky, Indiana University, Syracuse University, the Ohio State University. I've been teaching college students finance since 1993. Ryan may not have even been born in 1993. So I do know what I'm talking about, even when I'm not 100% correct about everything. And one thing I'll tell you is that part of the reason that your community's businesses don't grow is not just because you don't support each other appropriately. It's also because you don't handle disputes appropriately. The appropriate way to handle disputes, let me explain this. What's happening with the Tulsa Fund happens all the time in the white community. It happens all the time right now with Disney. They have an activist investor who's doing pretty much the same thing that Jay and Julian are doing right now. They're coming in, they're saying, it wasn't a couple $1 million, it was billions. It's like 10, 20, $30 billion. And he's saying, you're wasting the money. You're mismanaging the funds. This is nonsense. And what they're doing is they're demanding a board seat. They're not coming in and saying you should liquidate the company's garbage, everybody is trash. They're saying this is what we need you to do to right the ship. So what I would say to anybody that invested in that fund or any business is, don't just think about how you support each other, but think about how you handle disputes. Because if you handle disputes in an inappropriate and destructive way, then you're going to end up having significant problems. Now, Ryan makes another good point. He says, you had Jay on your show multiple times. I have had many people on my show multiple times. I did not market the fund. I was not a paid endorser of this fund. I want to make that clear. You don't want to be held accountable. I hope all the investors include you in the lawsuit. Well, if they do, then that's fine. But the reality is that I've had hundreds of people on this platform. I had Yvette Carnell on my platform hundreds of times. I do not endorse what Yvette Carnell is doing. I think Yvette Carnell is not a good leader. I think she ruined the ADOS movement. So one of the things you got to stop doing here, and if you say something else that's not true, you're going to have to go, is don't believe stuff just because you see it on the internet. Because one of the big problems that you have, and this is important too, to grow an economy requires certain levels of trust. And the problem that you have in the Black community, the reason that your economies cannot grow is because nobody trusts anybody. Everybody calls each other a crook and a scammer and this and that and the other. And that sort of nonsense is exactly the type of stuff that allows white people to come in and scoop up all your money. They take billions because you're sitting here spending your whole life obsessed with one black guy that you think got a couple $1,000,000 out of the community. I'm not saying that it didn't happen. I'm not saying that accountability isn't called for, but what I am saying to you is that I personally cannot tell you that I understand the inner workings of the businesses of every single person I've ever had on this platform. I do take full responsibility for my businesses. I do take full responsibility for my team. I do take full responsibility for the millions of dollars that I've used to support people like Dr. Claude Anderson, support King Randall School, Freedom Home Academy International in Chicago. I take responsibility for the things that I've supported and endorsed in a sort of paid way or whatever the case may be. But I cannot take responsibility for the inner workings of every business of every person who's ever been on this page. Give me a yes if you understand what I'm saying here, right? I'm not saying you have to agree. I'm just saying that it's and I agree with you, Helen. It is a shame I have to keep repeating myself, but I'm going to do this because there's a learning lesson here. One of the things I want you to pay attention to is the difference between how the Black community handles business disputes and the way the Jewish community handles business disputes. It doesn't mean that the Jewish community that they had Bernie Madoff was part of the Jewish community, right? So they've had $100 billion, $50 billion disputes. Not 11 million is tiny in the whole scheme of business. They've had $50 billion disputes, and people have gone to jail. All kinds of things have happened. But things get handled in a different way. Maybe they go to court in a different way, or maybe they approach it. But this idea of sort of saying anybody who you ever talk to in your entire life is somehow in cahoots with you, it's just nonsense and it's silly. And I just personally think that it's the kind of stuff I ain't got time for that nonsense. So I just want you to know that if you come here to troll, you better be a quiet troll. Because if you reveal yourself and you start saying things that's going to require me to disrupt from what we're talking about here on this platform, I'm gonna have to ask you to leave. Okay. So anyway, that's my point on this. So at the end of the day, I supported what Jay was trying to do because I've supported dozens and dozens and dozens of Black-owned businesses. 86% of Black-owned businesses fail. Some of them fail miserably. Is the Tulsa Fund a failure? That part honestly isn't yet determined. That hasn't been determined yet. People are making the debate, and this is another issue, right? This is what companies like Bed Bath and Beyond and WeWork are going through. For example, when a company is struggling, when a company is in a tough cash flow position, what tends to happen is that you start a debate. The debate becomes between the investors who say this isn't going to work, let's let it go, let's just kill the business, right? But then you got people that say, no, it's going to work out. You just need to give it more time and more money, right? That's the other side of that debate, right? So what's happening right now with Jay and Julian, and I'll address this directly. I know both of these guys very, very well. I supported them back before they had big platforms and everything else, right? So I know these guys intricately, both of them. I know them both equally well. That's the debate. Julian feels that the Tulsa Fund needs to go away. And when it was brought to my attention, I looked at the financial statements a little more closely, and I said, yeah, there's some hard questions that Jay's going to have to answer. I hope he answers that for the investors, and I told Jay that himself. But Jay feels like if he gets more time and more funding, he can turn it around or get it to where it needs to be from a cash flow standpoint. That's a debate. That's really a debate. Amazon had the same debate. After about 6 or 7 years, Jeff Bezos had lost billions and billions and billions of dollars. And there were people saying, give it up. This is no good. You're garbage. You're running this company in a terrible way. We need to shut it down. And there were other investors, though, who said, no, let's give it a little more time. Let's put some money in this company. We don't know if this Amazon thing is going to work, but we're going to keep funding it and allow them to realize that longer term vision and see how this plays out. Well, as a result, it happened to work out for Amazon. But here's the thing. It could have not worked out, too. There's another company. Has anybody heard of a company called WeWork? Anybody know about WeWork? WeWork is another company that had a guy named Adam Newman. Go look this up. Adam Newman, he wasn't dealing with $11 million. I think the Tulsa Fund's $11 million. Just so y'all know, Adam Newman wasn't dealing with $11 million. Adam Newman was dealing with about $15, $20 billion. Adam Newman was a CEO who got a lot of funding, a lot of support. And what happened was that after he received a massive investment from a company called Vision Fund, there were people that said that he's wasting the money, he's overspending. This company's in a horrible cash flow position. It needs to be shut down. And so what they did was they took Adam Newman out of the CEO role and they continued with we work with a new CEO. However, it's to the point where WeWork is still in existence, but their stock price is cratered. Their stock price is less than $1 now, and so effectively, some would argue that this we're at a point now where we don't even know if WeWorks are going to be around anymore. Maybe the company will be sold. Maybe they'll be open under a different business model. But these sorts of things happen all the time, right? So I just really want you to, as Black people, and I know, and I agree with you, Keith Patil. Keith says it's a shame you have to keep responding to this. I made money and lost money, never seen this energy about white business losses. Well, another problem that exists with the Tulsa Fund too is, and this is why, think about this. I've had a big platform for a long time. I've had people come to me for years and say, Dr. Boyce, you should have a fund. You should let people invest. And I've said, number one, if anybody invests with me, I'm only going to take investors at a certain level. I'm only going to take people that have that are what they call qualified investors. That means you have to have a certain amount of experience and fully understand that this may not work out. Fully understand that you might lose money. And I want everybody to give me a yes if you understand that sometimes in business it doesn't work out. Y'all do understand that that there's no such thing as a guarantee when it comes to most investments. Give me a yes if you get that. So it's very important you know that, right? Sometimes you lose, sometimes you win. The second thing is I would not take anybody's last $2. I would not let you, invest $100 or $200. No, if you're not ready to put 10, 20 grand in this fund, in the Watkins fund, which never existed because I didn't feel the Black community was really ready for this kind of project anyway. Because I said, if something goes wrong, if any little thing goes wrong, next thing you know, you'll hear screams, you're a crook, you're a criminal, you're stealing, blah, 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 blah. Now, I'm not trying to say that's not happening here. I simply told Jay and Julian straight up, I said, look, do your investigation, have the open conversation, look at the information. I got stuff to do. I'm running my business over here. I don't know Julian's business in detail. I don't know Jay's business in detail. But I love to see brothers starting businesses. That's why I support. But anyway, the point of the matter is to say that if I had done it, I probably wouldn't have taken small amounts of money from thousands of people who really hadn't invested before. I would only allow people to invest if you're putting up maybe 10,000, 5 to 10,000, and you have a certain amount of experience. I would literally put every investor through a training course to make sure that everybody understands what's going on. And I think that's part of the problem that you're dealing with now is that you have people that say, this is my first investment. And when you go through something like that, it's kind of like dating for the first time, where if you have your first girlfriend and you get your heart broken, it hits different than getting your heart broken when you're 35 years old. When I got my heart broken at 35, it was like I've been through it before. When I got my heart broken at 18, I couldn't get off the floor, right? So anyway, long story short, and I'm not gonna, I don't want to distract too much. I think it's fun to talk about because there are a lot of lessons that can be learned here. Um, I simply say that I was an investor. Here's where I did support the Tulsa Fund. I invested in it, just like Julian invested in it. Some of you invested in it. I put $10,000 in that fund after I saw the late Nipsey Hussle invest 10,000. He wrote in the Instagram chat, "This is epic, bro. I'm gonna put 10,000 in." And I wrote right under Nipsey's comment. I said, "You know what? Since you're gonna do that, I'm gonna do that too." And this is what I've done for dozens of Black-owned businesses. I could name dozens of people that I've supported. And let me tell you what the truth of the matter is. Not everybody did what they were supposed to do. Not everybody came through the way I thought that they would. In fact, I've had a couple of Black people just flat out rip me off. And the reason you've never heard me screaming and hollering about it on the internet is because I just move forward. I move forward and I say, you know what? Charge it to the game. There's a lesson to be learned. I'm not going to do this again. And I would just distance myself from that person. In fact, some of the people that you may see that say, oh, I hate Boyce Watkins, he's a mean guy. The reason they say that is because I realized that they were doing things in a way that I didn't agree with, and I had to distance myself, right? So this is business, folks. This is what it's not going to stop. If you read that book, I've told you guys in the Black Business School to read this book called An Empire of Their Own, How the Jews Invented Hollywood. And that book is powerful because not only does it give you the blueprint of how the Jewish community so brilliantly built up Hollywood studios like MGM and Paramount and all that, but it also shows that they had similar disputes. They had some fights that were 10 times heavier than this. It involved 10 times more money, 10 times more anger, just all kinds of stuff, right? So effectively, this is business, people. This is business. This is going to happen. So I would encourage you as you're building, again, in my book, The 10 Commandments of Black Economic Power, I talk extensively about things like this. And I encourage you as you're building, just know that when there's more money at stake, behaviors will shift. You're going to see things come out of people when they have money or when they're dealing with a high risk, high stakes situation that you didn't see when they were broke. People tend to be much more noble when they're broke. They tend to be willing to share when they're broke. But when you bring wealth and power in the room, I've literally witnessed people's personalities shift as they go from being unknown and struggling to suddenly being rich and having like 100,000 followers online. And it's not always something that I enjoyed watching, right? So anyway, do me a favor, hit the thumbs up button, thumbs up, share, subscribe if you have not done that yet. Please also feel free to go to my website, boycewatkins.com. There's lots of free resources there. In the Black Business School, we have the $5 a day investing plan that's totally free. There's also a free training there called How to Make Money Without Working. Feel free to go take a look at that. Also, I'm going to be in LA next week. And I decided with LA, because we have the writer strike going on, that I would actually focus LA on something I've never done before, where I talk about how to build independent platforms that can be they can distribute, they can allow you to create, distribute, and monetize content or your brand in a way that benefits you. Because my LA friends are so talented. And I hate the idea that the most talented Black people in our community are begging studios for opportunities or sort of being kicked around and disrespected. And so I think I'm qualified to do this. My videos have received almost 1 billion views. I never got any funding, any support. It's so funny. My platform was so big, got so big that there are people who swore that I was secretly being funded by the Jews, secretly being funded by the Asians, all this other crazy stuff. I wish I was getting the funding that we deserve, but we never got that. But we did this on our own. And the reason we did this is my background's in business and finance. So I understand the business of entertainment and content creation in a way that's a little bit different from others. And so I decided that for this Black Wealth Boot Camp, or it's going to be a Black Wealth training camp. That's two training camps are 2 days, boot camps are more like 6 weeks. But for this training camp in LA, I'm going to actually focus on that, like just talk about my process. I've never done that in a training before, and just kind of lay it out there for anybody that wants to learn. So if you're an attorney that wants to be known for what you do legally, if you're a mom that wants to create a platform around raising kids or whatever the case may be, this might be for you. So if you're interested in joining us in LA, just go to boycewatkins.com. Also, I'll be in Austin at the end of September at the Wealth and Power Summit. And then also October 20th, we're doing the All Black National Convention, which is another great opportunity for you to get together and see each other and hang out. All right. So anyway, thumbs up, share, subscribe if you have not done that yet. All right. So let's see here. All right. So let me talk about the topic for a minute. And then if you want to ask me a couple more questions about the fund, I can do that. I got to go to a meeting in a couple minutes, so I don't have much time. But the article that got my attention today was this article in the Wall Street Journal that's hilarious. They said, you've heard of quiet quitting. Now companies are quiet cutting. They said workers are waking up to emails and team meeting requests with a jarring message. They aren't fired, but their jobs are gone. People on the receiving end of these memos describe running through a range of emotions, from relief that they're still employed to a sense of dread that their bosses secretly want them to leave. They are facing a labor market that isn't as robust as a year ago, leaving many to believe that the best option is to stay put and hunt internally for a better fit. So effectively, what they're saying here is that now employers are kind of doing it like breakups. Has anybody ever had a relationship where you wanted to break up with somebody, but you didn't know how to tell them, and because maybe she was crazy, or you thought he might go off and punch a wall or slap a monkey or something, and so you said, it's not you, it's me, or I'm not ready for a relationship. Has anybody ever heard that one? I've been on the receiving end, and I've been on the giving end of that one. I think everybody's experienced that one, right? I just don't want to have a relationship, and then you find out she's dating somebody else, like in a serious relationship, like a week after she dumped you, right? So companies are kind of doing that now. Companies are basically finding subtle ways to push out employees that they want to get rid of, pushing out. So it's interesting because it's kind of a contrast to the whole conversation about quiet quitting. It's getting to the point where it's a matter of of speaking about, companies sort of taking those low productivity workers and saying, you know what, we're not really firing you because you're gay or you're black or you're a woman or something, and we don't want you to sue us for discrimination. So instead of firing you, we're going to just tell you that the job is not available anymore, right? And I'm going to tell you that that does happen. In fact, not only especially when you're talking about smaller businesses where somebody's the boss or somebody has a certain amount of latitude in their role, um, people that have economic control over their environment, like people who run companies, they can kind of create jobs or remove them at will. Right. I remember one time I met a young person who was super impressive, and I talked to her, and she was really super smart. And I said, I'd like to have a person like that on my team. And so I created a job for that person. I said, okay, you know what? I know I want you to work for me. So give me till Monday. We'll figure something out. Right now, if you are in the other scenario, like I knew another friend, there was a young lady I used to mentor, where she told me about all the jobs she had, and she said it's so racist out here. Every time I get a job, they end up laying me off, and it's not fair because this one company, the job just ended, so I had to go. This other company, they had to cut the budget or whatever, and I had to be honest with her. I said no. I said honestly, I think most companies, when they have people that they really want to keep, they find a reason to keep those people. I said, I think that you're being let go of because they don't want you there. And there's something that maybe you're not doing properly on the job, because she would tell me about fights she would get into with other people she worked with. And I said, you can't be doing that. I said, because if you get in a fight and you're causing problems, even if you're justified, there are certain companies that'll say, we don't even want that drama here. So you just got to go. Right. So effectively, companies, this is sort of a formalization. This Wall Street Journal article, in my view, is a formalization of something that I think has happened all the time. And it's also the reason why, in my book, The 10 Commandments of Black Economic Power, I talk extensively about how every Black child should learn how to start a business by the age of 12, especially your boys, because people who have businesses, who own property, who own stock and make investments, they have the ability to manifest economically that an employee does not. An employee looks for opportunities. A business owner creates opportunities, right? An employee looks to become a king. A business owner is a king maker. Do you understand? Give me a yes if you understand the difference there. So I really want your kids to be king makers and queen makers. And the best way to do that is to create their own business, even if it's not big, even if it's not as easy, even if it requires a little more sacrifice. The long-term benefit is that you have that ability in your own space to shape what that narrative is going to be, instead of letting others shape the narrative and then leaving you guessing as to what really happened, right? Like they tell you, oh, we're not letting you go because you're Black. We're letting you go because that position doesn't exist anymore, or because we just don't have the budget. Is that really the case? Do you know? So that creates like a lot of paranoia that people experience when they're in the workplace. And I don't want that for your kids. In fact, that's why my wife and I in the Black Business School created the financial therapy department, because, my wife's a licensed therapist and a full professor of social work. And we did that because we said there are a lot of psychological implications to your economic status that impact Black people in a unique and different way. And it's very important that you get, so you can figure out how your economics is a tool and a vehicle to deal with the deeper issues that matter so much more than money, right? Your mental health, right? So for example, I will say for sure that some of the chaos that you might see every now and then, which I don't really, I don't entertain much of the chaos, to be honest with you. But some of the chaos that you see in your community, some of the chaos you see in your family, it's a direct connection to mental health, because it's not about having the disputes. The question is, how do you handle them? So anybody who sort of is looking around and seeing things, I encourage you to look at it and say, okay, what can we learn about this? And can anything constructive come out of what I'm looking at right now? And if the answer is no, then you want to sort of imagine what a constructive environment looks like. And again, my book is at my website, boycewatkins.com. Or if you go to drboycebooks.com, you can actually get an autographed copy of any of my books. I'll put the URL on the screen. And just a reminder also, this podcast is on Spotify. So if you have the Spotify app, then you can look up my name and you can find me there as well. We just crossed over 1.1 million downloads on Spotify. Now I'm going to answer a couple more questions, and then I got to go in a second. Let's see here. Let's see. Adrian says, convert your job into a business, launch a consulting firm. Heck yeah, heck yeah. I talked to a young lady who's or the mom of a young lady who's about to go to college, and she said, well, what should my daughter major in? She wants to learn economics. Should she read books or go to college? I said, she should go to college because college is great. I've been teaching college for a long time. I said, but the number one thing I would do if I were her is spend all my time learning how to start a good business. I think entrepreneurship is the key. Entrepreneurship and sales. If you can do those two things, then you can print money. Say good salespeople know because it's a process, right? So that's what I would. If I was 18 again, I love having a PhD. And but it was hard as hell. I didn't finish school till I was 31 years old. Now there were rewards to that. My first job, I made over $100,000 a year. I was the only black man in the United States or anywhere on earth that I knew of, or black woman even, to get a PhD in finance that year. So I was hot shit. I got all the job opportunities and all that stuff. But if I could go back to being 18 again, I would have done none of that. You know what I would did? I would learn two things. I would learn entrepreneurship and technology. Entrepreneurship and technology. If I had, because those two things, mastering the internet at that stage and knowing how to start a really good business where I know how to see opportunities and develop a business plan and a marketing plan and all that, I could have made more money by the age of 25 than I made by the time I was 45. Right. But what I was dealing with was a lot of bad culture that came from my family where everybody in my family had jobs. So I saw education as a process to get the best job I could get, as opposed to understanding what proper training would look like to not just allow me to make the money I wanted to make, but to do it in a way that allowed me to be free as a black man. Because unfortunately, I know a lot of highly educated black people. I'm talking about law degrees, medical degrees, PhDs, who are stressed out as hell, because they don't like their work environment. And what I would say, where I challenge them, is to say, if you're so smart, if we're so smart and we have all this education, why aren't we smart enough to learn how to go start a business? Like I don't get it. There are dumb people who start businesses, but it's a lot of it's culture and a lot of it's training. So that's my 2 cents. All right. So anyway, let me keep going. So let's see. I'm looking at some questions. Okay, it looks like some of y'all in here argue with Ryan. You know what, Ryan? Your question was a little hostile, but you know what? I'm not going to block you out of here. Being here is a privilege, by the way. It's not a right, so I don't beg anybody to come in this platform. People get disrupted; they have to go. But Ryan's bringing up a legitimate issue. The Tulsa Fund is a legitimate concern, and I think it's fine for people to ask any question they want. And if you want to know what I've advised in terms of Jay and Julian, as I've said, answer the questions. That's it. That's my position. Period. All right. So let's see here. Somebody says, Ryan says, Boyce, you're acting like a defense attorney for Jay Morrison. Pull up the numbers and dissect them. Dude, I don't do that. One thing I'm not going to do. This is one thing I'm not going to do. I'm not going to racially profile black-owned businesses. I'm just not. I'm not going to. Y'all have never seen me pull up the numbers of any white man's small business and say, well, let's look at the numbers and let's see what this fool, let's see what this Negro's doing. Let's see what this guy doing. I saw him driving a nice car and living in a nice. I don't do that. I've never done that to a white man. I will not do that to a black man. If you want to know what's going on with Jay Morrison's business, go ask Jay Morrison. If you want to know what's happening with the Tulsa Fund, they have Treff Talks. You can go to those. They have publicly available information. You can go look at that. You can go do that. I'm not doing that because racial profiling. If every business got scrutinized at that same level, nobody be in business. If they'd done that to Jeff Bezos when he was trying to start Amazon, there would be no Amazon. I'm not trying to say that everything's good. I don't know that. I don't have that information. But what I am going to say to you is, if he were a 50-year-old white man, somebody said that in the chat. If he were a 50-year-old white man, he would have none of this attention on him at all. None of this would be happening. None of you would be talking about him. So this is black on black economic. I won't say crime. I'm not going to call it a crime because maybe something happened here. I don't know. I don't know enough to know. I focus on my business. But I really think that we have to process as a community how we sort of handle things and really understand that proximity violence is very real. That means that I'm more likely to be more critical of somebody right next to me than I am to be critical of someone who may be doing something much worse that's in the space that I don't know. That's my 2 cents. All right. So let's see here. Somebody says the PhD in finance won't break it down for us. No, that's not my fight. I'll break down other things, but not this. All right. So let's see here. Next question here. Langston says he's not because he's a passport bro, red pill troll with no business sense. I don't think he's talking about me. I think he's talking about Ryan. I'm not sure. Michelle McKenzie. Let's see. I saw your comment. She says, Ryan, I do think this is a last opportunity for Boyce, a lost opportunity for Boyce. It would be nice for him to dissect the numbers for us lay people. Yeah, that's a good point you make. It's just not something I want to do. I'm not interested in doing that. It's just because the accountability is already happening. I just don't think it's that important in the whole scheme of things, to be honest with you. I think that there's billions of dollars being taken out of the black community from so many other businesses. I focus on those, honestly. Let's see here. Next question. Michael, majority of Black people that want to start a business lack liquidity and funding to generate get their company off the ground. That's true. And so if reparations ever becomes a topic of conversation, access to capital has to be an important part of that discussion. But by the way, guys, I got to run. I got a meeting to get to. But again, if you have any more questions about the Tulsa Fund or anything like that, go to their website. They got websites, they got Instagram pages. Go look at all that. Julian Gordon is doing his assessment. If you want to go take a look at that, you can. If you're not an investor, honestly, you could just look at it as like a business that you chose not to get involved with. I think that's fine too. If you are an investor and you're curious about where things stand, as a general rule, you shouldn't just get involved when things appear to be going wrong. You should be aware of where your money's going when things are going right, right? So if you invested in 2018 and you're just now looking in 2023, I would say that if you were really interested, I would have encouraged you to look back in 2018, right? Because I think this is the way investing should go. And how this is going to end, I have no idea. It's very sad. I don't like to see Black people slinging mud and attacking each other back and forth. I don't like to see that. I just don't. It's not fun for me. And what makes me sad is like, there's so many people I could throw mud at legitimately, and like we would have a fun conversation. I could tell you about people that work for me that violated their contracts, who are now saying I'm a terrible person, but it's because I cut them off because they violated their contract. I can tell you about people that stole from me. I can tell you about people that where I invested and the investment went south. But I just think it's better to be productive. After you finish letting it all out and getting pissed off and doing your thing, at some point you got to move on. If you can't move on, then you'll never be successful. So don't just look at what that man's bank account looks like. Don't just pocket watch what somebody else is doing. Watch your own pockets. Watch what you're doing. Think about what you're going to do. What's your next move? So I would say that's the thing. So Ryan says, why won't you break down the TREF numbers, your finance PhD? I already answered that question. It's because I have this. Why don't you break down the numbers? Why don't you go find another PhD who will break it down? I'm sure plenty of people have. You're not going to see that here. So have a good day, everybody. God bless you. I will talk to you all soon. Take care now. Bye-bye.